let's take a look at the meta. All right, what is up, everybody? Let's take a look here at the current meta game. We're going to look at a few different tournaments as well over the last couple of days, just kind of get an idea of what's going on, as well as the weekly Ursiiday Pocket tournament, in which, there was nearly 2,000 people signed up. I believe 1950 was the final number. Look at that and more. First, overall meta share percentage. If we want to look at each single list, like I had before in my previous tier list, S tier is Gyarados with Greninja 54.43%. Mewtwo's actually gone up a little bit. When we did the tier list, it was at 49%. Gyarados dropped by a percent from 55. Let's take a look at the Aerodactyl list. Now, the Aerodactyl list has taken a huge hit in win percentage. Remember, this one I had as a sneaky A tier, which I think I still would leave it an A tier, by the way, but it was at 59% win rate. Let's take a look at the combined percentage real quick. 50% win percentage for Mewtwo. Pikachu is climbing as well as one of the top decks with a huge resurgence in the metagame, of course, to counteract Gyarados, and Zebstrika is very good at killing those Magikarps on the bench. 52% win rate for Pikachu, Gyarados 53%, Celebi overall 48%, Executor. Pretty much these ones, by the way, the Executors still typically feature Celebi, but there's just more Executor cards than Celebi cards. That's kind of how they do it. 52% there. Charizard right at 50%. Scolipede 46%. Golem 45%, falling off a little bit as well. We talked about Aerodactyl. Greninja typically is referring to the anti-meta stuff with like Druddigon and Taurus or Mew, things like that. Pidgeot, Starmie, Arcanine, all doing okay. Pidgeot's actually not doing that great, 44%. Starmie's doing fine. Arcanine's doing pretty decent. The Mew is kind of referring to the same thing as the, the Greninja lists. It also usually refers to the Mew with Farfetch'd and Marshadow and stuff like that. So it's really hard to just look at these as single things. So this is not always the best way to look at it, but for some lists like the Gyarados and Mewtwo and stuff like that, Pikachu, it's nice to kind of subsidize everything as a whole piece. Some other standouts that some people like to play a lot. We have Ninetales Rapidash at 47%. The Executor Mew is there. There's the Mew Farfetch right there, 48%. The old version of Pikachu with Electrode is actually still doing fairly solid, a decent performance at 51% and showing of 171 lists. Of course, you have the old Pikachu Zapdos, which is the one that people know the most. And the Raichu one is doing okay as well, 52%. I still think the Zebstrika is the best one to be playing at the moment. It's just faster, it's leaner, it's meaner, all that good stuff. And there's going to be a massive shake with the new set. Keep that in mind as we go through these tournament results, because this was just a mini set that shook up so much. I mean, Gyarados, that new card just became the top deck in the meta. Pikachu got a couple extra toys in Dedenne and the new Electabuzz to help support the Zebstrika idea. Of course, Celebi in Superior spawned its entirely own deck. Scolipede got its own deck thanks to it's just being good with poison. The new Golem, like there's so new Aerodactyl too, Marshadow. This is just so many good stuff. Ninetales Rapidash that got new versions of Rapidash that are being ran. Oh, and Ponyta, by the way. So really, if you thought that a mini set was a big shakeup, just wait until the new set comes out. All right, let's start looking at some tournaments. We're going to start with one that doesn't really have a whole lot of bearing, but some of you might appreciate this inclusion, is the BEC No EX No Problem tournament that happened on the 4th. It was won by a Rapidash Blaine deck here. The biggest percentage of showcases for Pokemon is going to be that Golem deck. It just makes sense. It doesn't need to run any EXs. By having Druddigon in the front line, Marshadow and Golem and everything like that getting set up in the back line. But it was taken down 11-2-1 by a Blaine deck. So for those No EX fans, Blaine's still king, even over the new Golem being as good as it is. Which I still think is, mostly B tier. But that's really the most that I'm seeing. Couple of the Executor Delmai's deck with the Superior. I do like that as well. Went 9-4. So yeah, cool little showing. Want to show that real quick before we get into the other stuff. But hey, No EX. A lot of people want that to be an actual mode. Maybe we'll get that at some point. Next up, we have Fox Cave Battle Arena. By the way, I'm only showing tournaments with at least 300 participants. Okay, so anything 299 or less, I am not showing the results here as we get up to the big one. So these 4 tournaments are just at least 300 or more. This one has 385. Most popular cards you can see here, a lot of Gyarados. But what won? It was the Psychic Fire list, which is just the Arcanine list running the single copy of Mew to help the Mew can help with things like Gyarados because, you have it at a disadvantage against Gyarados for the most part, but Gyarados' early game isn't crazy. So I think there's decent ways to get through that. And of course, Mew is incredibly good against the Mirror Match, Charizard, Mewtwo itself, things like that. So it makes sense. This is a good deck. Really cool to see. Next, we have in second place a Celebi Superior deck with the 2-2 Executor line. So it's not just the 2-1 that we've seen occasionally, or the 2 and then the 1-1 split between the new Executor and the EX. This is just going straight up 2 Execute, 2 Executor EX. And you have the Celebi Superior line you're sitting in the back, and you're really trying to use the Executor EX as a tank in the front and maybe get a couple of picks early on, because it does still hit like a truck when you get your heads. And then of course you have Erica to self-sustain it. I do like that this version is running X speed instead of Leaf in this deck, because a lot of your stuff has 1 for retreat cost, like especially because the main idea again is you want to execute into Executor out in the front line. You're not too worried about getting Executor pulled off for the most part. What you are worried about is starting with a Celebi or a Snivy or even Servine if you evolve into it early on, and not having one of your big hitters, especially Executor, in the front line while you build up your Celebi and stuff and your Superior. X-Speed lets you do that for free, because as you can see, everything except for Superior themselves and Executor only has 1 retreat cost. So I do like that instead of Leaf, because again, you want to be able to still use Erica and Professor's Research as well. Third place, we have a Aerodactyl list with just Marshadow, Farfetch'd, and a Hitmonlee. No other cards. A Showcase of Blue, by the way. I love me some Blue. If you watched our previous Machamp EX run, we had 2 matches where Blue clutched it completely. It was really cool to see. So this is a cool take. I like this a lot. I like this, the no Mankey Primeape stuff. I'm actually a fan of that. Hitmonlee, again, very good against Gyarados, especially. Being able to hit just a one-shot on a Magikarp and the bench is really, really powerful. And then, of course, Aerodactyl, just having that ability to shut down things in the active spot, does disrupt a lot more decks than you would think. I'm not going to go through the entire top line of it. I'm just going to probably go through the top like 8 or so. Kind of get an idea. Fourth place, Pikachu with your Zapdos and Zebstrika line and the 1 Dedenne. So a lot of the new ones you're seeing are actually doing a 1 of Zapdos, a 1 of Dedenne, and a 1 of Electabuzz. This is going for the same type of idea, just the 2 of Zapdos instead of the Electabuzz. I am mostly fine with that. There's really not a huge reason to run Electabuzz all the time. Of course, the 40 damage instead of, 30, like the Zebstrika, and it also being a basic is nice, but the 2 energy can prove to be somewhat awkward on occasion. Spader here, 5th place. We see another Aerodactyl list, just like the one we saw in 3rd place as we scroll up here. But the big difference is this one is an even 2-2-2-2. And this one seems to be a 2-2-2-1-1 split between Marshadow and throwing in a copy of Mew, just to help hedge some of those matchups. Same idea that the Arcanine EX deck does as well. And then, of course, here is a interesting list. I was going to say here's a Gyarados list, but it's not. It's a Wigglytuff with Greninja and Druddigon. That's super interesting. So you have a 2-2 split between Jigglypuff and the Wigglytuff EX, of course, your 2-2-2s across the board for Frogadier, Froakie, Greninja, and then 2 Druddigon to help set up everything in the back while this can tank some hits. And of course, you have the Jigglypuff as well to kind of act as another way to help you build up your Greninja in the back line with its sleep ability tied to its attack Sing. Then you have Giovanni, Leaf, Professor X. I actually kind of want to try this one. This is a very interesting take. Haven't seen a whole lot of Wigglytuff EX. And keep in mind, remember, I did say in the tier list, I thought it was a D tier card. Maybe in the right type of situation, it ends up proving to be pretty good. This one went 9-1, got 6th place. Got to hand it to him. I would love to eat crow. Maybe we'll try this one out. 7th place, here is a Gyarados list. 2/2/2s across the board, except for the 1-of Druddigan, because they're throwing in a 1-of Chatot to help also find their cards. A lot of card draw in this current meta, a lot of EX and evolutions in hand as well, which is funny because there's not a whole lot of red card to try to punish that. Instead, people are usually teching in right now Chatot to help just accelerate your own draws as opposed to inhibit your opponents. People value that more so. But otherwise, everything else looks about the same as a typical list. And finally, 8th place to round out our top 8, 7, 2, and 1 is another list. And I just mentioned, hey, look, no red card. This one actually is running red card as well, but the same exact thing as above. The only difference being a 1-of Leaf instead of a 2-of. So yeah, that's the top 8 for Fox Cave. Let's move on to Pocket Legends. This one was also from January 3rd. It had 546 players here. Top percentage Pokemon showing appears to be a lot of Mewtwo. And who won it? It was Pikachu. But not a Pikachu you expect. Look at this. 12, 2, and 1 from Santi McGoob. Running Pikachu with Zapdos, Blitzle, Zebstrika. That all seems very straightforward. But look at that. It's Joltik and Galvantula, the super cool new card that we got from Mythical Island. With Electro Web, it has 80 HP, not a whole lot for a stage 1, but it does 70 damage off a 2 energy attack, and also is just like Arbok, makes it so the opponent's Pokemon cannot retreat after the attack hits. That's super interesting. And I like it a lot, actually. Yeah, that's a cool idea. I've been wanting to give this one a try, and I just really haven't come around to it. I thought maybe Galvantula being at 80 HP, just a hair too weak. But hey, maybe it actually has some teeth. Giovanni, Sabrina, Professor's Research, X-Speed, Pokeball. The typical supporter cast is there to round it out. Let's see what second place was. It was a Gyarados deck. Oh, this seems really good. I see why it won. This seems really good against the Gyarados list. Not only just the type advantage, but the fact that it can forcibly make stuff not retreat. Like imagine they're trying to set up their Gyarados and they don't have enough energy on it yet. They've, didn't roll well on Misty. So you use your Sabrina to force them to bring in their Gyarados and throw out their Druddigon, or even just a Magikarp or Greninja, something that they're trying, like something that they care about in their backline that they really want to help accelerate their game plan. And you say, yeah, you can't retreat. I'm just going to keep hitting you while you're trying to, get your Gyarados built up. So I think that's a really cool thing there. But of course, this deck is still very good, 111, 3, and 1. Then we have Psychic Fire, which is just the same thing as the Arcanine one, but this time it's a 1-1 split between Arcanine and Growlithe, and you're going more so in on Charizard while still featuring that 1-of Mew to help round out some certain matchups. Not much to say here, nothing crazy in the list overall. It feels like a little bit crowded on average. I wish there was a way to search out the Arcanine. That's why usually you see the 2-of Arcanine, but if they want to have that Mew in there as well, at least Mew can be found off a Pokeball. So there is that. I do see the strength in that as well. Fourth place, looks like the exact same list from above, except no Mew, and looks like we're missing some type of 1-of. Yeah, we're missing a potion, it looks like. And also no Sabrina. Yeah, just straight 2-ofs across the board. Went 10, 3, and 1. Consistency is key, I guess. Fifth place, another Executor Execute 2-2 split between them both, and then the 2-2s across the board for Celebi, Snivy, Certified Superior, Erica, Professor's Research, X-Speed, Pokeball. This is a very typical list. It still does well, 10 and 3, but we don't see this deck win the whole tournament a whole lot, because I do think at a certain point these coin flips do kind of catch up to you. But hey, still a good list. Still went 10 and 3. Fifth place. Sixth place is Mewtwo finally making an appearance. Crazy that we had so many Mewtwo's appear in the entire tournament entirely, about 30%. And this is the first one we're seeing at sixth place, doing a 1-of Mew as well. Otherwise, it looks very typical with that new mythical slab in there as well. I do like the blue. I do love the blue. Cannot hate on that at all. 9, 2, and 2 is what they finished. Seventh place, another Mewtwo list. It looks like the exact same list, the 1-of blue. The 1-1-1 across, Sabrina, Giovanni, Blue, still the same. Yeah, looks like the exact same list as the one above. And then to round out our top 8, 8th place was another Celebi list, but this time it's actually just running the 1 of Execute with the 2 Executor EX, then 2s across the board everywhere else, just to fit in that 1 copy of Sabrina. Next up, we have Pocket Aces, 512 representation in the player count. First place was won by, actually first we want to take a look at the most represented Pokemon. A lot of Pikachu, a lot of Froakie, and of course a lot of Druddigon in most of these lists as well. Won by the typical new Pikachu EX deck we come to know and love. The one that I think is the best one still. The 2 EX Pikachu, the 1 Zapdos, like I was talking about before, with the 1 Electabuzz, 1 Dendenne, and the 2 2s of Strike of Blitzel. Everything else looks about the same. That 1 Giovanni, 2 Sabrina, 2 Research, 2 Potion, 2 XP, 2 Pokeball. It's just a good list. Do we see a Gyarados? We do. Second place Gyarados. See, this is why people are playing Pikachu, because it just, if you reach the finals, you're probably going to be facing a Gyarados in some way or another. And this is your very typical list. 2s across the board for everything. Even the Misty, Leaf, Research, and Pokeball. This is the very stock list. I still think is the best. But, you know, we still see some of these one-ofs thrown in here and there. But I really like the Double Druddigon, in my personal opinion. Second place, couldn't get past the Pikachu, though. Third place, we have another one of these Charizard Arcanine decks featuring that one of Mew. Looking very familiar as we go through there. Don't want to spend too much time on these lists as we've seen them over and over again. Here is another one with the same idea as the first place list, but no Electabuzz, just the 2 of Zapdos instead, but still that 1 of Dendenne, and the rest of the actual supporting cast looks the same. And that's interesting because now it doesn't show the rest of the tournament. We only show 5th place. We don't get to see 6th, 7th, and 8th. So let's take a look at 9th place real quick just to get an idea. And oh my goodness, I'm kind of glad they did that. Look at this spice. 9th place. Flareon, Vaporeon, Farfetch, Druddigon, and your, of course, 2 EVs to get your evolutions. Misty. And by the way, this is old Vaporeon, old Flareon. No new Vaporeon at all. We didn't get a new Flareon, but still. This is super cool. Got the Sabrina, the blue, Leaf, Research. Wow. I've wanted to do this because I love the idea that Druddigon is a tank to help, you know, protect your buildup, and it wants fire water. So, of course, an evolution line of Flareon, Vaporeon always made sense. I just could never get it to feel right, you know? I don't see their record, but I guess they got 9th place. Good for them. All right, and last but not least, the big one. The 1,940 participants. 28% of decks featured Druddigon. 19% Pikachu EX. 18.25% of Greninja, Frogadier, Froakie. Who won it all? It was Mewtwo. Mewtwo went 13-1-1. Mamek. With the 1 of Jinx thrown in, no Mew feature here, but Jinx instead as their 1 tech card, and also running red card as well. Really did well. Who did they beat in the finals? Truckup over here had Pikachu EX. I do think this matchup, by the way, is really close to 50-50. Like, I don't think it's favored in any way, shape, or form between either decks. It was 50-50 last meta, I feel, before Mythical Island. I still think it's 50-50 now, even with both new inclusions for Pikachu and Mewtwo. 12-3, though, Truckup went with this list. This is the typical 2s across the board and the 1 Dendenne instead of the 1-1 split with Zapdos and Electabuzz. Another Pikachu deck in 3rd place. Same idea. 2s across the board, the 1 Dendenne. Not a whole lot of Electabuzz that we're seeing as we move forward, but we are seeing a blue here, which I think is pretty cool. 4th place, here's a Gyarados list, 2s across the board, your incredible rounded out stock list, nothing fancy there. 5th place, another Mewtwo featuring your 1 of Mew, 2 of blue. Oh, I'm loving that we're and only 1 mythical slab. Interesting. I'm really loving that we're seeing a lot more blue getting thrown into these top lists. I've been saying blue's a very good card since he got spoiled, and look at that. We are seeing more of it, and all those people being like, well, Giovanni is just a better, it's better off running Giovanni because blue does the same thing but opposite. I don't agree, and apparently so does Dazai because they have the 1 of Giovanni and the 2 of blue. Huge fan of that. 6th place, Gyarados rounded out the entire thing. The difference being, instead of your 2/2s across the board, they're actually going for a 1/1 split with Leaf and X Speed, just so you can go ahead and use that Misty early or Professor Research early in some instances and still get that Magikarp to get retreated or your Froakie. Even though Magikarp, you can just use the ability, but hey, in case you're going first, I suppose. Grass Psychic, cool. This is Executor with the 1 of Celebi, no superior at all. And then you have the 2 and old Executor as well, which is essentially just the same thing as the EX, but 30 less HP and then 10 less attack. And then you have all your supporters to help round it out as well. Erica, Giovanni, Sabrina, Leaf, Oak, Potions, Speeds, Pokeballs. And finally, our 8th place list was a beautiful Charmander, Arcanine. No funny business here, no Muse, no nothing, just a very clean across the board list that went 10, 2, and 1. Congrats to all these players here participating in this huge tournament. This is your wonderful meta update. And I think Mewtwo's still an S tier deck, Pikachu's still an S tier deck, and Gyarados still an S tier deck, your top 3. I do still think that my tier list is still very true. Not gonna, pat myself in the back too much there, as it's only been a few days, but hey, I feel pretty good about where everything's landed. I cannot wait for the new set because we're going to see a huge shakeup, I guarantee it. But hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think down below. What'd you think of the cool Flareon Drugadin deck down there as well, getting 9th place in one of these tournaments? That's a really cool one. Got any secret sauce you've been working on as far as decks go? Let me know. See you guys.